from your perspective of how government focuses on social problems, where this reputation of being inefficient or not performance oriented might come from, or why the problems that led to the need for lawsuits might arise.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you asked a different question. I want to respond to one thing that you said, though, and then go to that. At Vera, we actually only worked in partnership with government. Everything we did and every innovation we tried to start was done from the moment the idea emerged in partnership with a government agency. Now, we didn't do our work to solve the kinds of systemic problems that Kim is identifying, the sort of structural barriers to working with government. We focused on an issue. So the police department was doing something that had both an inefficiency and an injustice. And so the inefficiency was something that we could help government because we were playing to their interest. We paid for everything we did, ultimately, out of government's pocketbook. And everything we did locally to test the ideas, we used philanthropic resources, although at times even government would pay for that. So we spoke the language of government, we played with government, we were in bed with government every minute of the way. But that didn't solve some of the structural problems that prevent you from really scaling up and taking innovations in big places, which have to do with wide-scale commitments of resources, the way government's own inertia, own inability to withstand change, the movement of people in and out of government on a regular basis, the inability to think beyond your elected term is probably one of the number one problems, the lack of foresight. And so I just want to say that there are a whole bunch of other ways in which you can play with government and still not get to that place.
I'd love to add one to your list, and it might be a great cue up for you, which is a lack of accountability for results.
Absolutely.
A lack of a sense that we can measure results, know results, or actually be able to compare. Can't measure it, can't be accountable for it. And there are areas, and in particular workforce development, where billions of dollars have been spent, and there actually is no real data on results.
Yep.
It's really a remarkable thing looking at it at this moment, but that is just how business has been done.
I mean, it's not as if
the government plant, huh?
You're a government plant. It's not as if people were unaware of these criticisms.
No, it's interesting. I think that there are different moments in time where we have charismatic leaders that engage a population to join them that you don't expect, and I think that happened definitely with Clinton. I think that's definitely happening with Obama. I mean, it's no surprise that they've been talking about the White House Fellows Program, that they're so overwhelmed with applications. They haven't seen this number of applications since Clinton's first year. I mean, how many of you would join the Obama administration tomorrow if you could, to do something unique and different? And you thought you could put your hands up? A couple of you would, right? Hello? He's a Democrat. You're in business school. You didn't think of that necessarily. I mean, you didn't see the nexus of kind of these folks together. No, let's look at where even business school has changed over time, right? So I just have to put that out there and say that that there was an opportunity at a time to join government when there were a lot of very young, excited, entrepreneurial folks there who had to work with, and it very much mirrored the way Clinton had some of his challenges too, with the old guard. And the old guard isn't always bad, because you got to know where the bodies are buried. And I do say that because there's a reason why we have every regulation. You have to inherently be. I have a 3-year-old and he's into Blue's Clues. I mean, if anybody has children, they know this damn paw print can drive you crazy thinking of this clue. And so it feels like when you're in government, every time you look at policy, you're looking for the Blue's Clues of where it started originally. And you pull out your handy notebook and you sit in the thinking chair and you try to talk again a new language to folks. And so in my case, I joined government because I didn't want to do consulting. That was the other option when you graduated from Oxford. B, I didn't want to go to business school. That was the other option. C, everyone was going to law school. I didn't want to go to law school. All right? I'm just being honest with what were the options for a motivated, young, I'd say intelligent person. And I couldn't believe Clinton won. And I couldn't believe someone younger and connected could win. And I helped him and all those kinds of things. So when we joined the administration, what we realized is that a lot of people didn't know how to do things. And the way that government works, it's all through procurement. And it's the very unsexy things. And what it ultimately means is the power to decide if you want a targeted approach around change or you want a universal approach around change. And that is literally where the absolute difference happened in AmeriCorps and why we saw social entrepreneurial organizations go to scale. Because there was a whole camp that said, let's do a targeted approach. Well, a targeted approach means we're only going to focus on these poor communities, and we're only going to focus in X places where we know there's a lot of patronage. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, people do it, right? Patronage just happened in the corporate sector as well, right? And it would limit the pool and it would limit the competition. Well, something radical happened. We said, nope, guess what? We're going to change the way we do things. We're going to have a universal approach. Everyone can apply directly to the government. Oh, wow, this sounds great and romantic, but the truth was we had no idea that we would get thousands of applications. And any guess how many were new organizations that applied to be AmeriCorps? Any guess? Rough guess. What percentage, let's say out of 100, how many you think were new organizations? Any thoughts? Take a risk, take a risk. Hey, this market means we all have to take risks. Take a risk. Any thoughts? 75%. It's actually higher. It was closer to 90% were new organizations the first time around, which lets you know that it struck a chord with very grassroots folks who were organizing, who had never done federal procurement before, had never dealt with federal rules and regulations. Probably many of them had never gone through an audit. I'm really serious. I mean, could you get how this? And we were all excited about that, but we had no capacity to handle a universal approach. And so I would say that the very sophisticated, I don't use that in a judgmental term, I talk about infrastructure sophistication. Those were the organizations that were able to leverage it to go to scale. There were other excellent organizations that didn't have the infrastructure that could not go to scale. The best reading program in the country, Simpson County, Kentucky. No way they can go to scale. Just didn't have it. Citier had infrastructure, right? I mean, that's, so in one way, what you noticed too in the nonprofit sector was this whole tiering, and then the language of social entrepreneurs came out, and then a level of, I say, sophisticated lobbying that we almost early in the administration swung the pendulum the other way, which was, are we snuffing out the really grassroots organizations that are organic to a community for organizations that are growing in other cities but coming from a major metropolis? So
let me ask.
Sometimes you get what you ask for. So in all, those were probably the big challenges.